I want to say how much I respect the senator from Florida. I respect his viewpoint. I respect the amount of effort he has put into this issue, which is a very difficult and a very complex issue. He speaks from the heart. I have never questioned his motives. And he has worked very, very hard to put together the very best piece of legislation I think that could have been accomplished on this Senate floor. I wish I could stand with him in terms of final support, because I too believe that our current system is broken, that it needs to be addressed. Status quo is not an option. We will continue down the same road and only to a greater degree than where we find ourselves today. But I'm deeply concerned here, and for me the most difficult of things to work through finally came down to the fact that, as Senator Rubio has talked about, there is a great level of distrust in this country today toward whatever comes out of Washington and whoever's mouth it comes out of. Some of this is due to, I think, certain events that have happened here in the last several months. Benghazi is still not settled. The American people still have not satisfied with what has been said about what happened exactly and what our response should have been. And there's been changing narratives that feeds into the distrust. Certainly the scandals, the IRS scandal and others, continue to feed. And it's a very dangerous thing for a democracy when people have lost trust in their elected representatives, in their government. It's a very dangerous thing for the future. And we need to restore that. But to me, that element that now exists means that when we take up legislation, as comprehensive as this bill is, as sweeping as this bill is, we need to ensure that the American people understand it, and that they have trust in us that what we promise we will do in this bill will be fulfilled. And all this, from my perspective, has to be measured against the 1986 Immigration Reform Act, which I voted for and supported. Ronald Reagan was president at the time. We had a divided Congress, Republicans and Democrats. The Senate was under one party and the House was under another. And so the situation was somewhat similar to today. But with the president's leadership and with the promises that were made that the then 3 million people that were here illegally would be granted an opportunity to get on a path to citizenship. And it was combined with the fact that we promised in that bill, verbally and in language, that we would secure the border so we wouldn't have to deal with this again. Well, here we are in 2013, dealing with it again, but not 3 million, but 11 million and counting in terms of illegal immigration, and it's having an enormous impact on our country. And it is an issue which we have to address. But I think we have to do it in a way that acknowledges that the promises made then were not fulfilled. And when added today to the promises and the things that have been said that have caused even a greater level of distrust than any of us could possibly imagine, that has to be addressed. And the way, in my opinion, to address that is, to borrow from Ronald Reagan, trust and verify. And I think verify now, because of this trust deficit, has to become first before people are ready to trust. They simply don't believe that the promises made here will work, that they will be fulfilled. When the underlying bill basically says the Secretary of Health and Human Services will state that HHS, Homeland Security, has a strategy to address the border security problem. That doesn't play very well with people who have seen strategies promised before. They want to see results. And the real issue here has been whether or not at least for me and I think many of my colleagues, has been whether or not we are able to prove to the American people that they're going to get their results before we start a process in which moves people through a legalization process which we know we're never going to be able to pull back. There were some amendments offered here by my colleagues, which I supported, because essentially what they said was, we want to look at results first before we begin the process, of which we're never going to be able to pull back, of legal status for illegals in this country. So it's that cart before the horse here that I think, for me at least, and I think for many of us, is the reason why we cannot support this bill as it's currently written. I hope the House will come forward with something more credible, perhaps more sequential, that addresses this very fundamental flaw in this bill, which is proving to the American people that we will fulfill the promises that we're making in this legislation before we start a process of granting legal status to illegals, so that we will not get years down the road only to find that we have not succeeded in fulfilling those promises, and yet we have created yet another amnesty situation, and we will not have secured what we want to do. I'm the son of an immigrant. My mother came here with her family. It's been the narrative in our family that legal immigration is what has made America the country that it is. And so I don't fear immigration. The diversity has been good for our country. I served as ambassador to Germany for 4 years, and I can't tell you how many Germans and Europeans from other countries came up and basically said, someday I hope to get in the lottery, that my name will be pulled. I've been in line for 15 years. I've been in line for 20 years, waiting to come to your country through a legal immigration process. It's pretty hard when you're the son of an immigrant, you know your family came here the right way, to know that there are millions of people in this world that would love to come to America and become responsible citizens, and yet to see them look at people flooding across the border and being granted that privilege, which they have not yet been able to attain. So I trust that we'll be able to go forward, trust the House will come forward with something that is more credible than what we're passing here. I voted earlier for a procedural motion to proceed for debate on this issue because I thought we needed to have this debate. I was hoping through the amendment process we could address this fundamental issue, at least fundamental to me. The employee verification has been strengthened. The border security has been strengthened. The exit visa problem has been strengthened if the promises come true. But they've only been strengthened on a piece of paper. And we need to see it strengthened for real on the border, at the employment office, and at the exit visa offices on the portals for people coming in and out of this country. That is yet to be seen. That is yet to be demonstrated. And so without that fundamental, let's get this in place first and in order to restore that trust, which is so lacking in the American people, justified on the failures of Congress and the failures of this administration in particular, or any administration, to deliver what they said they would, to fulfill their promises. And so that is why I will not be supporting the bill. But I do hope, given the problems we have with the status quo, as I think clearly outlined by my colleague from Florida, we need to keep at this. We need to find the solution to the problem, because America cannot continue to be the country that it is and be the country that we want it to be if we don't address this wound and this flaw in the current immigration system. We need people with skills at the high level. That Americans cannot fill all those jobs. and until I hope our education system improves to the point where we can fill all those jobs. But some of our most important industries, pharmaceutical, software, and others, important to our national defense and national security, they need those employees coming here the legal way through the visas. We need some of the lower skilled people. I have a lot of processing plants in my state. I have a lot of agricultural sources in my state that cannot find enough American workers to fill the positions that they have offered. That ought to be addressed. I want to address that. So it's not simply someone standing up and saying, we don't have to fix the problem. We do have to fix the problem. I respect the efforts that have been made in a bipartisan way to try to do that. I just think this bill has one major fatal flaw, and that is the promises are not demonstrated, are not fulfilled before the process starts. And for that reason, I cannot support the bill in its final form. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.